in 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to Schlag and Brig 3, The Aftermath. We have joined together again for a brief discussion of all the games that happened the other evening and to answer some of the questions that maybe we didn't have time to answer at the time. So my name is David Bodicum. I hosted the thing. In the behind the scenes, we have Scott Rux. Hello, Scott.
Hello.
Hello, and he will be giving his opinion on what happened from the technical point of view. And of course, we have our two contenders, who were, of course, Nick Gates.
Hi.
And Dan Peake. Hello.
Hello.
So we shall be going through the games one by one. So just a little bit about why we did Schlag 3. I've always had a bit of a scratch of an itch that Slug and Brig 2 was okay. I think they ended strongly, but some of the things perhaps were a bit over ambitious. So I was trying to come up with something that was certainly better, even if it meant it was maybe slightly less ambitious or less original, and trying to make it easier to focus on it. Something that was easy to follow. Now, of course, we've had substantial leaps forward in terms of what's technically possible. So David Simmons asked at the time, Scott, how did you string all this together? I did see on Twitter there was like some amazing picture of you with your sort of 12 screens in front of you or something. It seemed like that anyway. So what sort of technology is involved behind the scenes?
Well, I don't have the pictures in front of me today, but this did require a couple of different things. So the major issue for an event like this is to get video from our participants. Lovely video. So they're streaming to an intermediate low latency server, and I'm taking that output and putting them into the boxes that you see in front of me. I also need a display for your screen, David, for all the games and such, and so you're streaming that as well. And then the scoreboard and the buzzer displays, which we'll see in the main games, those are controlled by two other laptops that are also streaming into this. So it's just basically 5 streams all feeding into one place.
How many screens did you have in front of you, Scott?
On the day in question, it was a total of 6 screens because 3 computers, each with a second monitor, because it's easier to push stuff onto a second monitor, and they're all doing, and I'm just capturing and moving the bits around in my house.
That's crazy. So much more technically complex than the first two.
Absolutely.
I'd like to think at least it had that effect of at least, being able to watch both of you at the same time,
Oh, it looked absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I like this side-by-side shot, for instance. Just Dan's right there on top of Nick, just you can point down if you wanted to, and just those kind of displays are kind of fun.
Was that on your shirt last week, Dan?
No, these are the letters from one of the games. So yeah.
Excellent.
All right. So Aglavi asks, for each game, can you explain whether you thought you'd do well or not? So as we're going to go step through these, maybe you sort of give your initial impressions of like, oh, I think I'm going to be good at this, or this is a nightmare for me. The first game we had was called Sparschwein, or Piggy Bank. It's sort of one of these sort of do you get the knack of it or not type games. So what did you think of this one?
I lucked into a knack, I think, and obviously once you worked it out, then the rest of it's pretty easy. I think Dan had the wrong idea. He was doing it vertically. Really, the knack for this one is doing it horizontally, like a pizza tray sort of thing. So a coin bounces on it, and you just remove the knife, and the coin's on it at the same time.
That is
and once you work that out.
once I did get to that a little bit later, but even then it was still hard. So I've got it here, and the slot is so incredibly tiny that what I started doing is when I would eventually get a coin balanced on it, that then don't know whether you can see this, that there is basically no purchase between the knife and the slot, and so I was so excited that it would fall back in right just before the hole, and so you were getting the coins out and mine were falling back in for the last minute. For the first 2 minutes, I was just flailing about, had no idea.
Yeah, well, one of the tricky things about this is that I have to try and sort of work out whether these things are possible or not. And I pretty much came to the same sort of technique as Nick, which was to sort of jiggle the coins so that at least one of them was on top of the knife, and then use it as a sort of extracting device. But there's definitely room to sort of get some of the thinner coins out that way. I think Nick did very, very well to get the 50p coin out. I was surprised that he managed that. The pound coin is almost the same thickness as the slot itself.
Yeah, that's not possible.
Yeah, but you had about 15 or 17 coins in there, and you need to get 10.
10.
So, but
I think it took me about a minute to work out the technique. So
yeah, I mean, if this
might have done
wasn't, if this was the TV show, I might have been able to give you an extra minute. But like, I just wanted to try and crack through the games as best we could.
Yeah.
See, I'm too excited again. I've been practicing as well.
There's no point using a scoop, Dan. You just got to jiggle the coins that lands on top of the knife, ideally.
Well, we're discovering why you won this game.
Yeah. Yeah, so Nick did win it on the pence rule, but it was 8 coins to 2 anyway. So he took a 1-0 lead, 1 point being it for game number 1. So let's leap forward to game 2, which is called Narman, which is a game taken straight from the Schlag and Rob show. One I haven't played for a while, though, actually. Maybe they've run out of surnames. So the way the thing about the quizzes on the German show, of course, is that there might be loads of people called Schweinsteiger, but we don't have that issue in Britain. So what I did was I researched the top 100 most common surnames in the UK, and then just sort of picked some ones that were like different enough. And then there happens to be some articles on ranker.com where they have like the 100 most famous people who are called Williams or whatever. And quite a lot of them are American. But if you search through for the words like Welsh, Scottish, or British, or English, or things like that, you will sort of automatically find pretty much 5 relatively famous people that have the same surname. So that's kind of how I did this. Now, this was the first time we got to use Scott's marvelous buzzer system, which is incredibly exciting. So just take us through it, Scott. So Nick and Dan had like an app on their phone or a web page on their phone, and they pressed a button on their web page. So like, how does that go all the way to you and then turn into graphics that we can then see back on the stream?
So it's running a web server on this laptop. I need to move it to a more safe place. The short version, I guess I can reveal this now to all of you. So the initial design had it all calculating the frequency, the amount of latency, and exactly how browsers delay. It turns out that browsers are very weird when it comes to that. Like, your mobile phone browser may not send a click until after your finger lifts up, as opposed to when your finger hits down. Little things like that, kind of make a difference. So this is all done. I had 2 laptops next to each other, and they gave out different network times because browsers are different. So this was all lots of late night testing until I figured out something that worked. And the short version is they each have a web page. There's a big button on it for buzzing in. If they hit it, it just sends something to my server. And on a question like that, if we only get one buzz in a period of time, well, that's who the winner is. And there's basically a window. It's about a fifth of a second, and as long as only one, as soon as, let's say, Nick buzzes in, it'll wait a fifth of a second to see if it hears anything from Dan, and if it doesn't, it just gives the light up to Nick. And
okay, but if there's two that are in that window,
the code declares it as a tie, and both, and then it just picks one of them at random. According to the logs, this only happened once, and I won't say which question it was, but but it turns out that 1/5 of a second is fast enough where there's no noticeable lag, like the time you hit a buzzer and the time it lights up isn't really perceptible, or it's within the bounds of what we consider acceptable, and 0.2 of a second is a little longer than like your standard Twitch response or your muscle response. So that's enough of a difference where clearly one person is is definitely out of it at even at 0.2 of a second plus network. But the key, the other side is that once there's literally a different web page that is just there to sit there of, did I get a buzz from Dan or did I get a buzz from Nick, and we'll do the lighting and the animation, and that part I'm really proud of, because I got the nice design from David the night before, and it just came all together in one go. So
I really like
really
this game,
good.
actually. Yeah, it was a great game for the buzzers, because it was a really close game, and then Gillian Anderson. All I could think of was Gillian Tailforth when I buzzed in for that question. It went straight up my head. Like, X-Files, David Duchovny, brilliant. Not what I need right now.
Jolly good. All right, let's move on, skip forward in the video to game 3, which was called Wo ist das Gewicht, which is where is the weight. So there's been a number of weighing shows on the show, and also it was quite cool to be able to send you a nice sort of gadgety thing that wasn't that expensive, but it was a little chunk of money. So it was a little toy for you to play with. But obviously I couldn't send a kilogram of tinsel with it.
that's
so
36.
I thought, well, if I'm trying to get you to weigh something, it's either going to have to be something like you have to have a block of cheese and you cut up bits of cheese for it. And then I had the idea of, well, to a certain extent, as long as these weights are fairly generic, then it would be relatively fair to get you to sort of do a scavenger hunt within your own environment, assuming that both of you have relatively similar sort of books, pens, and computer mice and whatever, like paraphernalia that most people have in their rooms. So that was where the idea came from. It's probably a game that the real show couldn't do itself.
Yeah.
Interestingly. So how did it go for you?
Yeah, it was good. It's just a shame there's no way for the camera to follow you around the room, really, because that might have been a bit more interesting. And I mean, luckily you had the vocal, me trying to commentate what I'm trying to do. Without the visual, I don't know how useful that was. But as a game, it was great fun. It turns out I'm rubbish at working. Even now, I'm looking at my shelves of stuff and discovering that I'm rubbish at working out what sort of weight it all is.
But not as
I was
rubbish
better
as
than
I
Dan.
am.
Yeah.
I must admit, that 10-gram weight threw me really. What weighs 10 grams? And then after the stream finished, I went round, couldn't find anything that weighed 10 grams. It was always well over or 1 gram, nothing even close. And then someone said, have you tried like a pound coin? You had a pound coin from your first game from the piggy bank, and so I put that on the scale and it came out as 8.8. I think that says 8.7. There we go. Thanks, guys. Could have done with that knowledge about a few days earlier. So that was good. Great game. Really liked it. And as you say, you can't play that in the studio.
Yeah. The only thing I know about weights of coins is that a 2p coin is exactly the double of the weight of a 1p coin, so that you can put 1 and 2p coins together and you can just weigh them. Not worry about how many
Ah.
copies you've got. But
Not true of £1 and £2 coins, though. Interestingly.
so yeah, I mean, I have to say you both struggled somewhat on this
Yeah.
game.
What is a gram? What is a gram?
I mean,
There's
I
a lot of
think
interesting. Sorry, go on.
I mean, I think on the last one you were looking for something like, was it 630 grams, and you came up with a pad that was worth 125.
I'll tell you why. Because it was precisely a quarter of the size of the book that I'd put on previously. So I had a book that was about 800 grams. I then turns out that's why. It's my maths, isn't it? It turns out to have been quarter the weight.
Well, see, I use Dan's book as a guide to what a book might weigh. So Dan helped me out immeasurably. I mean, also I picked
idiot.
your book, David,
Yeah.
because that was only the funniest one I could have picked. I'm sure I forgot.
Yeah. A lot of people commented that book didn't look particularly well thumbed.
I have to say, I have read it actually. So there you go. I've not read it much since, but I have read it.
You're a librarian. You take very good care of your books.
I'm a librarian and I work with books so often that I don't really read much at home, unfortunately. But I've had that for years and years. So I had it since my last house, at least 5 years ago. So it has been read.
Another friend of mine is so bored of lockdown that he's finally got round to reading that book.
I might read it again. It's a good book.
I've not read it yet. Sorry, David.
Okay, so then we skip forward to a puzzle. Now they have had sort of puzzle games doing jigsaws on the show itself. As I think I mentioned on the stream at the time, there was going to be an idea of kind of like, once you do the puzzle itself, then there might be another puzzle somehow hidden. Maybe there's like letters that have an anagram that you had to solve or something like that. But I had issues of like, if you couldn't solve that second puzzle, then how do I hint fairly how to solve it? And it just got all a bit edgy. And I thought, well, if I at least find a way of allowing the audience to kind of play along and sort of try and beat you on your time, then it kind of took a lot of the curse away from it being a sort of a fairly static game. So, Dan, you seem to find this relatively straightforward.
Yeah, I've done quite a few jigsaws, and recently I've actually been going over a game called Pandora's Box, which was a game by Microsoft in about 2000, something like that. And that's all image-based puzzles and similar things to jigsaws. So I think I happen to have had a bit of, a bit of practice coming in accidentally, which Nick may or may not have had.
Well, it's I don't do them very often, but I don't not enjoy doing puzzles. But I was doing the old do the frame bit, do the outer bits first, then the inner bits, which showed to be much slower than the method you were using. But actually, we had a staff when I worked in a staff quiz over the summer, and there was like a live round, and one of the bits of it was complete a jigsaw, and I think I was like the second or third slowest. So, so I sort of had an inkling coming into this I might not do very well, but I think you did it about twice as fast as I, about halfway through when you completed yours. So the surprise was genuine when I heard you finished.
When you did your frame, Dan had finished. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I wasn't looking at the screen or anything. Or his screen.
No,
at
it's
all,
impossible,
so,
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So confession time. I said to you, don't press any buttons or hover over anything. That's because if you pressed one of the buttons, it got rid of all of the pieces except the edges. And if you hovered over another one of the options, it actually showed you the full box art of that puzzle.
See, I reckon that's how everyone was doing it in 3 minutes in the chat. I reckon we obviously cheated.
But people were quick, weren't they? It's good to show that we're fallible, that we're giving people a chance.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that was that one. Then we had another game taken from the show, which is called Mention Kentness or People Skills. So yeah, we had a survey of 61 people who were watching the stream. They had to fill out. It was actually 11 questions, but we only should have needed 9.
Well, it's first to 4 originally, lest we forget.
Yeah, well,
We agreed. That's why I'm not upset about it. It's just
it's
the old one.
Well, yeah, I think it was because there is this rule of if you're equidistant, you could potentially both get a point.
Yeah.
And that did happen once. So I thought, well, hang on a second. If that happens once at least, then we're gonna leave quite a few of these questions lying on the floor. So,
it was a fun game. I have no issue with doing all the questions, not at all, really.
So somebody said this is basically espionage from the Jackbox Party Pack thing, but that this game was first, if you like. But on the show itself, they use I think 10 people, and they set those people in front of you, which is fair enough. But I think we, given that we sort of roughly know the sort of people that are watching the stream, it was much more fun to be able to sort of use a larger sample size and sort of guess of those 61 people that replied.
I think me and Dan have got a rough idea of the audience, the sort of people who'll be watching. So yeah, I think it was fun.
Quite a lot of people like us, I guess. To be fair,
less but more more allergies.
More what?
Yeah, well, that was
allergies.
That was certainly.
All right.
That was certainly one of the sort of and more unusual. So it's on the screen now, actually, including hay fever. Do you have an allergy? And there were 61 people replied, and 35 people said yes. So yeah, it was.
I mean, surely half of the general population does not have an allergy. It's got to be a lot less than that, but our audience did. Well done, allergy sufferers.
Our audience are largely sickly people, so that's what I was banking on.
Was it 6 people have kissed a celebrity? Was that one?
Yep, that's what we said for that one. Yeah, in fact, twice. I think once each. You had a spot on guess, which was some going, I think. And Michelle in the chat was sort of virtually psychic. She, I think, had 2 or 3 spot on guesses and several others ones very, very close.
Yeah.
And then it all came down to how many people are in a sports team, professional, amateur. And only 2 out of the 61. Yeah. Which
it's difficult to be in a sports team. I mean, very much these days, but just the amount of time that you'd have to put into it, and also there aren't that many like proper sports teams. There's a lot of amateur stuff, but not proper ones. So yeah, I went low, just low enough.
Interesting if a question was phrased, "Do you play sports?" Because I imagine someone would like to do park run and that sort of thing. That's all the rage. I wonder if that may be a higher number.
I agree. It'd be much higher then, but that's not the question that was asked.
That's not the question. No, I get that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yes, I suppose you had to sort of draw a line somewhere, but I think maybe it's easier for people to do individual activity rather than be part of a team. So Dan won the last 3 questions in a row on that, and he took that 5-4, so that brought the score up to 9-6, and he took the lead for the first time. Then we had another game that's from the show, which is called Marion Kaffa, which is Ladybirds. And this was me pushing my PowerPoint skills to
it was wonderful.
It's very good. Yeah.
But I think it was pretty much a relatively decent version of it. The only thing that I would have liked to have been able to do is on the TV show, quite often when they go under the leaf, they sort of sit there for a while and then they continue onwards.
Yeah.
And I think there probably was a way of me sort of simulating that a bit by, I think, using sort of custom paths in animation in PowerPoint. But yeah. Anyway, I thought it was a relatively decent version of the thing. How did you find it?
Yeah, it's a good game actually because I dare say that if you played this around the time I was 33 years old, I'd be even better than I was here. Um, I'm quite good at seeing things quickly and reading quickly. But I think in this case, Dan was just slightly quicker than me in some of them.
It
But
was
adding up,
close overall.
yeah, it was close. A lot of the games, a lot of the sort of the buzzer games were close. So across the entire evening, which I'm quite proud of. I was at least competitive, even
I think you were much more competitive than the final scoreline suggested. It was a lot closer
Yeah,
than that. I had to. Some people have got like the sort of the spatial. They could just look and go, oh, there's 4 dots on that one, there's 6 on that one. I didn't. I had to count them all. There was no other way. And the hardest thing, and I think you did this on one of the questions, was trying to remember which ones you'd already counted and which ones you
yeah.
hadn't. And I think because there was one where you either forgot one or double counted one, I forget which.
Yeah,
There was
I
definitely a
forgot
question
one.
where you did that. That was the hardest part for me, was remembering which of the ladybirds I'd already done.
Yeah, I think there is a sort of technique where you could maybe use your fingers on your lap and sort of like bend them in once you know you've done that particular lane. But
Now you tell
I
us.
think somebody said the easiest thing to do is just sort of stare at it and just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Rather than
I mean, it's pattern recognition. So once you realise what the dots look like, you can sort of mentally quickly just go, well, that's 5, that's 7, that's 8. And it's just adding it up, and that's where you can make a mistake.
Yes.
As I did.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Not much more to say about that one, I don't think. So the next game was Korbkopf, which was surely the crowning glory of the evening.
Pun intended there?
Did all the ping pong balls make it back in delivery, David?
I haven't actually opened the parcel yet. I dread to think what order they're in. So when you're marketing a magic trick, there is this sort of phrase which is called "pack small, plays big," because obviously I have to try and sort of get things that are relatively portable to you. And I thought, well, actually, this comes in a fairly tiny box when you order this online.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, if I can sort of get this so that you can sort of assemble this live, it's just 3 sticks, which I thought was a relatively easy thing, although it seemed like you had a bit of trouble with it.
It wasn't so much putting it together. It's then trying to get my headphones back into it at the same time, which is more of a challenge.
That I hadn't thought through. I mean, maybe we could have just allowed you to sort of go slightly off cans for a bit on that, but yeah, it's one of these sort of like best out of 10 knack games that they often have on Schlag anyway. So I thought it was quite a good. I'm surprised I haven't had something a little bit similar to this on the show, actually, if I'm honest. When I tested it, I think I missed the first 3 in a row, and then I think I got 6 in a row after that. So I think once you get you got a relatively good idea of. I mean, it's quite a big net, I have to say.
I noticed in the chat, reading in the chat back afterwards, that Michelle said that my basket was tilted, so I'd have less of a chance. Maybe. I think I tried to overthink getting it into my. What it was, I just throw it directly up, then sort of move under it.
That was very much not the technique, because I started doing exactly that, and it turns out, ignore that, you actually have to just throw it into it, which is actually, and then, oh, well, okay, he says, trying and failing. I did 4 just now, okay, but now that I'm at, there we go.
I think I need to put my arm in front of me a bit more than it was. It's sort of here. Perhaps I should have been here. I can arc it in a lot bit easier.
It is harder sitting down as well. It's easier standing up.
Yeah.
Well, I did test it. It sat down, I must admit, just to make sure that was possible. I I think what happened with you, Nick, is that like your first 2 or 3 throws were not high enough. They just didn't have enough energy in them, and then quite a lot of your subsequent shots they hit the rim.
Yeah.
So
This one I could only see how I was doing by watching the screen and seeing where it was going afterwards and trying to adjust after that. There's a slight delay in the in what's happening and what comes through, so I couldn't adjust. I couldn't use that to adjust, but I could see where it lands at least and try and adjust in between shots.
It was certainly fun.
It was fun. It was definitely funny. Which is the important thing, really.
yeah, it didn't outlast its welcome, hopefully.
Yeah.
But okay, so then we go on to game 8, which was called RPM, which I didn't even dare translate into German.
This is a great game.
And so, because of a weird technical loop feedback issue, I had to sort of effectively not have any music going through my earphones. So what we did is just before broadcast started, I gave all the clips to Scott. And Scott, if you're there, maybe you could explain what was going through your mind when you started playing these clips.
So I got the files. I managed to copy them off a USB drive and slide them into another machine. You may have heard some of the USB beeping during the broadcast, and I wanted to make sure that the files were intact and copied over. So I put in the Beispiel in my other pair of headphones on that, and all I heard was gibberish going at 200%. And I literally thought, "Oh no, the files are corrupted. We're in a lot of trouble." and it was only until I somehow alt-tabbed to either the list of games where it went on a little longer, and then I could hear parts of a song like, "Oh, this is intentional. Everything is fine. Nothing is ruined." And I just queued up the things and just didn't want to say anything on mic. I just okay, we're all fine. We're okay.
So originally, this had me. I was going to sort of do a phrase of like just my voice because I was just trying to think of an original take of a music round. So I was going to do sort of either maybe a trivia question or a phrase like "Now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of the party" or something like that, so that you'd hear that gradually get slower and slower. And then I realized, well, hang on a second, like because this is sped up, it's not unlikely to cause any particular issues on YouTube copyright. So as long as I kept the end of the clip at least a little bit sped up, which it was I think at least 25% faster than normal even at the very end, then we would be okay. So I thought, well, I've got the entire of Spotify to go at to get these clips. So that's how I ended up with you actually using music clips. It wasn't really how I intended it to start. But
I assume if ever you had any...
I've had no copyright strikes at all since.
That's great.
It would have happened during it's pretty. It would have happened during the broadcast. You would have get a warning notice saying, "We think you're playing music. Stop it now, otherwise we're going to end this stream." Yeah, well, which has actually happened on the first one, I think.
It did, yeah.
Yeah, it's still banned in Germany to this day. That stream.
Was that the backing music for the thing?
Yeah. And weirdly, don't now. Otherwise,
sorry.
There's 4 pieces of music that you can find on YouTube from the show. 3 of them are already flagged. But for the 4th one that we found, for some weird reason, isn't. It's obviously not registered with a copyright association or something. Anyway, the really hard thing about this game was that I would look for like an interesting clip of like, oh, this is a song with an interesting or distinctive beginning, and then you put them through Audacity, and it's got this a quite useful thing where you can adjust both the speed and the tone by different amounts, and then it will sort of gradually go from one extreme to the other. It's very, very good. It automatically did most of the work for me, and then that speeds the clip up to like a few seconds, and then you just copy and paste that 10 times, say. And that was all fine. But the thing is, once I have heard the original and then I play the question to myself, I can't unhear the original.
Yeah.
So I think, oh, is that really obvious, or is that now complete nonsense?
Yeah.
And I zigged and zagged back and forth. In fact, some of those songs are either 150% or 250% or somewhere in the middle, sped up, because I kept changing my mind as to what I felt was fair.
Yeah.
So
I thought the questions were, pun intended, very well pitched. They were, some of them were, I don't think any of them were gimmies. I think we got some of them very quickly, just because, I mean, I like a good music quiz, and I know Nick likes music as well.
I will be honest. I fancied my chances in the music round against Dan. I think I won the last two and the first two Schlagged and Briggs.
You did. It was down to the wire.
It was. Well, this is it. I mean, I threw it away. I gave a wrong answer at one point because 5 couldn't name their song correctly. But that's by the by. I mean, I think you thought it was too difficult, David, but actually, the ones that we were getting quite early are pretty distinctive. So you pick distinctive tracks, and then you got them because they're distinctive. So, I mean, as far as I'm aware, that's perfectly fine by me. I mean, like Coolio. I mean, that was one of the biggest songs of the '90s. So it's got very, its opening is very not like anything else. So I got that pretty quickly.
I mean, the other thing is that, like, the as well as the voice being garbled, sometimes the kind of the beat of the song, or the sort of distinctive percussion of the song still remained even at 250% or 350% normal. So if it's like da-dum, da-dum, it'll just go da-dun, da-dun. You'll still get the same pattern, just a bit faster and a bit higher.
I mean, watching it back, the hilarious bits were the ones where both me and Dan cottoned onto it, and we're trying to go through it in our heads, trying to get to the chorus to get to the title of the song. I mean, that was funny. It was surprisingly a slightly visual game, actually. Considering it's considering what it actually is.
And
yeah,
great game. I could play a few hours of that.
Yeah, I think I could as well.
Yeah.
But you might hit a format there, David.
Yeah, may well do. Well, maybe I can sell it back to Brainpool for the next show. Okay, so then we had Wir gewinnt blinden, which the finest powers of Google Translate tells me is blindfold, blind Connect 4. So this is a game that I actually was going to do on Family Brain Games. We bought a garden-sized Connect 4 thing, which we carted around to various run-through rooms, and we sort of blanked out various parts of the circuit, because we found that if you could see bits of it and not other bits of it, it sort of gave you some idea of what was going on, but then you would get lost a little bit of the tactics of it. And so it's something I have tested several times, and we didn't end up going with it. I don't know quite why, because it always worked really well as a game. I think they just felt that, like, it's sort of like it still was Connect 4 at the end of the day, and it didn't feel like a very original thing. I think they wanted something that felt brand new. I suppose it was fair enough.
Would you have had to pay usage rights if you would have kept it as it was, or is it out of?
No, it's a generic enough game, just like Jenga and stuff like that. It's sort of it's a game. 4 in a row is a game that's been around for a while. If we called it Connect 4, it would have been an issue, but yeah. Which I didn't, because I called it Wir gewinnt blinden. Nick, you seemed somewhat sentient at this, because not only have I seen family sort of screw this up quite badly, but you were able to sort of not only know exactly what was where, but even do the thing of, like, lining up two possibilities, so that no matter which one Dan blocked, you still had an opportunity elsewhere.
Well, it's interesting. strategy is not really my strong point. I tend to be quite route one about things. The easiest thing tends to be the best thing. But it's surprising I didn't find it that difficult to remember basically where things work, because a lot of the time, I mean, it's a great respect, Dan. You played it very obviously.
Thanks.
So I can sort of, so it's not difficult for me to work out where Dan has gone, just given that every other line, because he went in the most obvious places quite a lot of the time. Yeah, I mean, I was quite pleased with the way it worked out. So I wouldn't say it's sentience. It was just sort of half Connect Four, half memory. And I was quite pleased that he fell into the traps that I set for him.
Oh, that was excellent. And that second game, yeah, very well done.
I was surprised. I thought that was a very obvious thing, but when he went there, I thought, oh, thank you very much. I'll take that.
Yeah, well, I had a 4 in a row once I put my counter on top of yours. I just didn't realise that you were going to have a 4 first.
One already.
Some people said afterwards that I should have focused on the bottom left. Would you have remembered? I did basically. I entirely forgot that I'd set up some stuff there.
The answer to that is I can't remember if I remembered that you had 3 in a row on the second row, if I'm honest.
It's irrelevant because I fell right into your devious trap.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it worked out pretty well for me. I was quite pleased. I'm quite pleased actually that I've won all the strategy games, all the board strategy games in the Schlag Brig run. It surprised me no end, to be honest. So I'm very pleased at the points for this one. The hardest bit was trying to get before the show, we had to make the blinds for it. A bit of Perspex electric tape. Now we had no idea what the game was going to be. I mean, we had the screen of we had a screen. We had David put like in the background, match this with electric tape. So it was just that's it. It was literally just make that. Make sure the bits are big enough. Now crafting is not my thing. So as you doubtless noticed, Dan's are much nicer than mine, which I had to use several bits of tape at one point.
Oh, I did. Yeah, but
yours at least look straight. Mine look completely haphazard.
We were told better to go over than under, so that was the important thing. So yeah.
So we had no idea what the game was going to be or what it was for, but we spent about 10 minutes putting that together early on before the show.
So that's why we were 10 minutes late starting, because Nick couldn't cut.
Yeah.
Yeah. That in fact, that extra wide electrician's tape was one of the most expensive props I bought for the entire thing.
Was
it? Yeah. It was £7 a roll.
Oh, wow.
Blimey.
Yeah. Not cheap. Okay, so that is game 9. So that took us up to 30-15 as Nick won that one 2-0. So the next game was Strafsicht, which is plan view. And this again was going to be something that I was half thinking about doing for Family Brain Games, because
I was going to ask. It felt inspired by that. Yeah.
We had these kind of blocks available to us on that show, and I thought, well, if doing this game this way didn't work, then we can always do this other game. So I thought, well, if we can always use it here. So I also this is kind of inspired by when Dan, when he's doing his streaming, as some of you may know, with his puzzles. I thought, oh, this is brilliant. I didn't. First of all, for some reason, I didn't even know that it was possible for a computer to cope with 2 webcam streams.
Yeah, same here actually. Not before this, I had no idea.
Which, as you know, I'm that technologically ignorant. So as soon as I sort of realised, hang on a second, we can have shots of your faces while you're doing things with your hands, because basically game shows, particularly sort of Krypton Factor type tasks, there's a phrase which is faces and hands. So you want people's expressions while they're doing the thing. You don't really care about what their bodies are up to.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, well, this is fantastic if we can see your face while you're doing these things. So Dan already had this camera. Scott very kindly funded a camera for Nick,
Yeah.
and so we were able to do sort of quite a lot of these picture-in-picture stuff with which Dan is currently modelling right now.
It's a great innovation. It certainly would have made a lot of things easier in the previous SDBs we did.
True.
Yeah,
Rather than messing about with camera setups.
yeah. Scandra asks, how did I glue these things together? Well, I bought a load of 40mm wooden cubes off Amazon, which again were surprisingly expensive. I think they're about 11 quid for 30. So they're 30 pence a shot, each of those little mini cubey things. And then I just used normal wood glue to glue them in various combinations. And
Eventually, correctly.
yeah, as I said on the actual night, there's like a box of shame where all my failed attempts of doing elementary geometry were failed. Anyway, I've got a set, 2 sets that I was happy with, and they all glued together quite well. And then had to do sort of various coats of acrylic paint on them to make them the right color. And they're not like ultra finely machined, but they're within a millimeter or two of each other, and they fit together in all the relevant ways. So,
how did you ensure that you generated unique puzzles? How did you make sure that there wasn't a second answer?
I'm not sure that there are. I mean, without massive computer program, I'm not sure. I suspect that there may be one puzzle where the first two pieces have to go together in a certain way, but there might be another way in which the other two pieces, if you flip them around, they would still give a correct answer. So the rule was if you found any valid correct answer, then you were fine. But I think because the pieces are relatively weird, then subject to that proviso, I think generally there's only going to be mainly one way of solving these things.
Yeah.
The only thing that puzzled me a little bit about this, Nick, was like you buzzed in once wrongly, and they said, "Oh, well, there's a hole in the side of this. Is that wrong?" And
yeah, I think I busted out of hope more than anything else. I wasn't expecting to win this game, to be honest. To get 2 points. I was thrilled with in the end, because this is very much a Dan game. I think it was mental agility skills. So I was just so pleased to get the outline right. I was buzzed out of. I'm not sure really. It seemed like
it would have been
allowed.
It would have been allowed for you to sort of show it to the camera and not buzz and say, "I've got this. Is this allowed?" And I would have been allowed to tell you, "No, it's not."
Well, it's all very easy in retrospect, isn't it, David?
Thank you for the point.
That's right, isn't it? So Dan won that mini game for 2, and that takes us to 40-15.
I'll admit I'm now weighing the cubes out of each cube was a 4-block cube came to 57 grams. Okay. So it's about 15 grams each. If you're interested for the weighing game.
Okay.
Not that we have them.
Yeah. Game 11 was Versteigerung or auction. And I don't think that, as far as I could tell from Lewis Murphy's notes that he passed on to me about all of the past shows, hello, Lewis, that they've done anything in this type of area before on the show, which I'm a bit surprised about. They've done estimation games, but they've sort of been things like, how many seconds will it take for this balloon to explode? Whereas I would have thought like some sort of thing where like they drive a car into the studio and they go, well, estimate the price of this car. I mean, they don't seem to have touched anything like this. So I'm not sure why I landed on Bonhams, I think they've sort of got a bit of a reputation of being relatively high end,
Yeah.
perhaps even more so than Sotheby's. And so, luckily, on their website, they have a search engine facility that allows you to go from high to low. And so I just picked various different categories of objects. So, whiskey and paper and cars and what have you, and just try to find some either valuable or interesting things. Um, and as soon as I saw the bottle of whiskey one, the one that's on the
Goodness,
screen right now,
yes.
I thought, well, I'm definitely having that. I
Yeah.
thought I'd seen that one in the news, and when I checked it out afterwards, it turns out it wasn't this one. The
Okay.
one that was in the news was from Sotheby's, and that sold for 1.45 million.
Oof.
Wow.
It probably doesn't even
So,
taste any good. The thing is, you can't open it and find out. So,
Yeah.
well, yes. However, the BBC managed to track down one of the guys that used to work for this company, McCallum,
mm,
and he was one of the people that was working at the company at the time that it was bottled in 1986.
okay.
And what he said was, "It was nice, but I've had better." He even said that there are other distillers who are doing stuff that's just as good.
Wow.
But this particular 1926 whiskey has become like the holy grail. So even this Sotheby's one that sold for 1.45 million didn't have the fancy limited edition Peter Blake label. It was just sort of, it just seems to be that there is a particular cask of this stuff that's limited, that just has sort of developed its own aura amongst collectors, perhaps out of all proportion. The
Was this one
DB4
of the
car one,
question? Sorry, go on.
the DB4 car one was an interesting one because we had a range of guesses from that, from 55,000 up to 3 million. So no one had an idea about that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, me and Dan's guesses were quite similar, weren't they? We were with 30,000 of each other, so that's quite interesting.
There are a couple of times when I guessed 1,000 because I was expecting you to be over.
Yeah, it's gonna be a low one. Yeah.
And then one of the times I played my Joker because I didn't think you'd gone high enough. I think that might have even been the whiskey one. In retrospect, I shouldn't have gone at 1. I should have gone at about 5 or 10. It should have been a low figure, but not 1, because then it bit me in the bottom. There was one where I went 1 and you went something like 3, and the answer was 4. It was a very low number, and you managed to squeak in under it, which was very annoying. So that was a flaw in my tactic there. But you didn't use your Joker, and swine.
No, it was actually quite an interesting decision, because the fact that if you played your Joker, both people got to redo their guesses means it's not an automatic play at any point. As you saw with the last question, it basically came down to, do I think you've overbid or not? And I did think you did. Although you were in the right ballpark. It was a great guess. Yeah. And so I left it because I couldn't get any better, I don't think.
Yeah.
So the strategy worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I really struggled with this game. I really struggled to put. I mean, who has £600,000 to spend on a bottle of whiskey? If you have that kind of change lying around, you're in a different ballpark, really. So I really struggled to put amounts to these values.
I think I underguessed quite a lot, and you overguessed quite a lot.
Yes,
I think
and that was a bad thing for me.
Yeah.
So Nick squeaked that one 5-4, which takes us to 40-26 in the overall standings. Chris Dixon asks, Sludge and Rob has a tradition of some sort of vehicle-based show. Were you thinking about comparable lines at all this time? Not really, because there is quite a weird set of spreadsheet considerations to go through anyway on these things. Like, I have to balance quizzy stuff so that's not too often, skill, strategy, memory, judgment games, and then the things you can't categorize. I didn't want 2 buzzer games next to each other, just, well, just because, to give it a different feel. I had to sort of spread out the props a bit, and then also I need the first and the 15th games to be effectively a race because they don't work particularly well if they're first to 7 type things. So the fact of involving some kind of race or car was way down the list of priorities. Okay, so game 12 that's on you're seeing now is Wer lügt, which means who lies, and it's just taken straight from the show. Now, when I checked the TV show to sort of get an idea of like how did they put these sorts of questions together, I didn't realize what they would do because I thought what they would do is they would have like maybe 8 or 9 right answers, so the ones you shouldn't buzz in for, and then like they would sneak in a wrong one at like position 10. And then I saw, because most of those are in German, I can't really follow them. But I did find one which was like a maths question about like which of these calculations has a result above 1,000. And number 2 was like for 991. So like the second thing was already something you could buzz in for. And I thought, oh, they're doing that, are they? So
All sorts of variables. Yeah.
so I thought, right, if you're allowed to get away with murder, because I just thought it'd be like 1 or 2 things you could buzz in for. Some of these things, I'm fairly sure there's like 5, 6, 7 wrong ones. Almost half of them are wrong. It's just they're just not buzzing in for them.
Yeah.
And I think it's a bit of a sad thing on the show that they don't tell you which of the ones were. Oh, at least
Yeah, that's true.
it doesn't appear like that. Maybe the host says it or not, but anyway. So in each question, I did have a little bit of a different pattern as to what was going on. So the first one with the capital cities, every other one was going to be a wrong one. The Ed Sheeran one, it was going to be like a lot of ones were okay, and then the wrong ones would start to creep in. That was quite a common one. The likewise with the Premiership teams one. And then, of course, there's the infamous square numbers one,
You're so devious. Yeah.
Where the first one was correct, but all the other ones were wrong, and you should have buzzed in for those. I think they've done that joke on the real show itself. I think,
Okay.
or something quite similar. So I'm not claiming it to be an original idea, but I do claim it to be a funny idea.
Oh yeah, very much so.
I managed. Sorry about the Liz Truss thing, but I managed to confuse myself because she used to be Labour and then she was Conservative now. But luckily that error didn't matter. But when I was writing these things, I forgot to make a note of which ones were fake and which ones were real. So I had to spend like half a day going through these things all over again. And for some reason, I just lazily assumed that I knew that one, and I didn't. So how did you find playing this one, you two?
Yeah, it's fun.
It's
difficult, but fun.
Chicken in a way, isn't it? It's I think this one might be, but not sure. And so, really, like I loved the square numbers questions simply because you're so devious, David. I love it. It's just at which point, when do you buzz? When are you sure? And I know that the questions would gradually get easier over time. Did we get? I think most of the time we got maybe one incorrect answer between us. So we were all slightly cagey, which I think is good because it allows the audience to play along longer.
I'm quite quick with reactions to this sort of thing. So if I know I'm going to buzz, I won't wait till halfway through the timer to buzz. I'll just do it, and it worked out pretty well most of the time. I think I got one wrong. I can't remember which one I got wrong, but I think it might be this one here, the football team. I think I buzzed for Wolves, didn't I?
Which is a tricky one because only I think 2 or 3 seasons ago, and for some time before that, they were in the Championship, and even before that, I think they were even down a division before that. But only in the last 2 or 3 years they've been in the Premiership and done quite well.
I was sure when they first started playing this game on Schlag and Ra back in the day, each question would have like 7 answers. One was wrong, but after it went round all 7, they'd remove one of the correct answers and go round again.
Oh,
So
that's quite clever.
eventually, we like well, the wrong answer and the right answer left to buzz in on. I don't know when they changed that, or whether I'm confusing it with a different game. But I thought
You
it was
may
a
well
pretty
be
good way of
right.
doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, you may well be right. You may well be right. I checked a relatively modern clip.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
some of
it's a bit
those,
like this for that these days. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, that I and like I couldn't. I don't think I found any question that ran to the full extent, but there were several questions that got down to like a silly answer where it was obviously wrong.
Mhm.
So these,
Which is what you want.
I wrote them down to level 15, so you could have let it go as far as that. But and I had spares if we had no response even at the 15th level. But
This is a great game. It's a game that only works with the butter system in place as well. So again, it's a good innovation.
yeah, I was a bit sad that we didn't get to the next question in the start in the pack, which was going to be, are these words spelt correctly? Which would have been fun. And there was one which was about, are these bones in the body? So it started with things like radius and trapezium, and then there's
Okay.
cuboid, quadrilateral, prism, octagon,
Oh.
ellipse, oblong, and right angled triangle. So yeah, we didn't get to that one either, which is a shame. But there we are. So that was game 12, and it was 12 points in the Dan columns. That takes us up to 52-26. And so this takes us now to game 13, which is a commercial game called Quinto, which admittedly is quite a bit more complex than I think they would probably allow.
My armchair producer head, when I saw this being described, was screaming. In actual fact, it's just 3-dimensional Racco. It's not a complicated game, not really. It looks more complicated than it actually is. It just put things in order, which is fine.
I was thinking about taking off the sort of points and bonuses and just making it, as you say, more like a sort of a 2-dimensional sort of dice Sudoku type game.
Yeah.
But then I thought, well, people watching this know what they're letting themselves in for.
They've come this far, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure they can handle it, and I felt that because it's quite a well balanced game, and also it has hidden teeth to it. I thought if I was to start meddling around with it and not really know what I'm doing, I'm going to sort of do a bit of an injustice to the people that made this game. So I thought, no, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it properly. And chat did seem to like it. There was lots of nice comments about this game, even if it was a bit points based. So
I know people have rushed out and bought this since watching it.
Yes.
So there you go.
You should get a commission, yeah. I will say when playing this game, I started this game where I didn't take a few of your numbers because I saw the -5s at the end and I was a bit worried about them. So even though I wasn't getting a point or two, I was hoping that later on you'd have to hit the -5s before I would, because I thought there'd be more of a penalty. And I think in this case it worked, but I think in most games that doesn't happen. I'm not sure.
I mean, I was just trying to fill 2 rows in. So if anything fit and it seemed reasonable, I'd take it. Same with your rolls. The interesting thing about this game is that it looks like a game of luck and it purportedly involves luck, but we both have the same. Both use the same dice effectively, so the decisions are ours to make. And I thought the way to win this was to complete 2 rows. I thought 14 was a pretty good high number. That fairly likely at some point something higher would come up.
Did we ever roll a 15 or more? I don't think we did.
We got a 17, Rather importantly, you've got a 17 right at the end, which I put possibly in the wrong place. But
Possibly, yes.
everything else fell into place for me.
Mm.
Anytime you rolled something that fit in my boxes, I thought, yep, I'll take that. Absolutely
Yeah,
fine.
yeah. The game just turned on a dime. You were well
Yeah.
ahead for most of that game, and then all of a sudden it just swung. And I need to go back and look at the chat, but there must have been a bit of I was in shock. I was dead surprised that I won that game. I was not expecting to, based on
I was
how
surprised
the first.
as well, but
Well,
until I
yeah.
realised the mistake towards the end. But even though we discussed it afterwards,
We
and we
don't
reckon
think
that
it
it
made a
wouldn't have made a
difference. No,
difference. So
it did feel a kick in the teeth, though, didn't it?
yeah, it did.
Yeah.
I thought I had this. But yeah, my whole strategy is predicated on some high numbers coming up at some point, which it didn't really happen. But
Yeah.
it's the same. It's the same with both of us, of course. So that was really interesting.
It should be the case that that you should take the single points that are offered to you. But as it happened, it was a sort of a useful escape mechanism, so that when those big numbers didn't come, Dan has a place to put some smaller
Yeah.
numbers.
Mm.
The chance of rolling 15 or higher is about 10%. So
Yeah.
you know, given that we
Do you know
had
how many times were you trying to work out how many times you rolled all three dice? So it's
Must be about 30 times, so we should have got a couple more.
well, I mean, there are 27 spots for you to fill, so it wouldn't be quite that many, I don't think. I know that sometimes people refuse numbers.
What program did you use for that, David, for dice rolling?
So that thing on the right, if you can't read what it says in the menu bar, it says Sophie's Dice. So if somebody has, I think it was some sort of Kickstarter thing, it's on Steam, and it allows you to create any set of. Let me just. I'm going off piece
really
now.
Interesting. I'll look it up after this recording.
I did look it up after the stream. It looks like an amazing dice program, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not coming up unfortunately, but okay. Oh, that's not
because you created the Dan and Nick coin as well. To determine who starts. So I think it basically you can use it to make any form of dice that you want. I had a quick look at some of the menus.
Really useful.
Yeah.
So now I know that's what it is. I shall look it up afterwards.
Yeah, it's got some really quite wacky things in there. So you can even do like sort of pass the pigs type stuff. There's like all manner of geometrical shapes you can do in there. Yeah, it's really quite a useful thing. So the only thing you can't do, which was a bit annoying, is you can't color individual faces. You can recolor the spots of particular faces in different colors, but like the texture that goes around the whole dice has to be a particular texture, or one texture. But anyway, it's and I found a thing that allowed me to keep that on top all the time.
Okay.
So that was another thing that I had to sort of negotiate myself around. But yeah, once we had that system working, it was quite good.
And well done for not making a mistake doing any of the numbers there, because that would have been a catastrophe.
I will make one observation, which is that the center three rings are blue, red, and yellow, but the rows are not in that order. And I'm having to double check the numbers and put them on the score, and it's a lot of addition in a very short amount of time. We got through it though. It was good.
I'm not sure why I did that. I'm not sure why I did that. I was quite pleased with that arrangement of finding a way of getting everything jammed into the right spaces.
It's lovely, yeah.
Because that's something that the actual real game doesn't do. Maybe it should do. Okay, I think we've talked enough about that. So let's move on to. So that meant that Dan was on 65 to 26. So that took him over the 61 point barrier, and so he won. Not that really anybody watches this particularly for who wins and who loses, really, but there we go.
I did think it was a shame that it was won on a game that wasn't quite so active. A
bit
more,
agreed.
But it was a good game. I enjoyed it a lot. I would play again.
Well, I'm happy with the 13 games I chose to be the main ones. Even maybe,
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose maybe that one could have been 12th and Verlugt could have been 13th, but then again,
But Verlug's a good
like,
game as well. I mean, that'd be a crowd favourite, I
I
think.
didn't.
So
I didn't. I had a feeling in my water that it would finish earlier than game 15 this time, and
Mhm.
then like if I'd put Verlugt as 13 and you'd won on game 12, then boy, a whole ton of about 200 questions has just hit the floor,
Yeah.
not being
Yeah.
used.
Yeah.
well,
So you know, it. There's never really a satisfactory way of organizing these things. I tried to put some relatively beefy long games in sort of like the 11th, 12th, 13th slots, hoping that it felt like a bit of a battle had happened,
Yep.
so that you know, and I think that was the case for all of those games actually.
Mm.
Maybe Quinto could have gone 12th and Volag 13th, but then I have the problem of do I have then two buzzer games close to each other? I certainly have two numbery games close to each other then. So, you know, it's one of these things where um, if you change a couple of games round, it kind
Yeah.
of upsets some of the other rhythms as
Mhm.
well. So,
Yeah, it's just unfortunate the way I mean, it doesn't really matter, but I think when you want a victory on a big meaty thing, like a sudden "you've won" thing, and Quinto didn't quite do. I love the game. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a shame that someone went
Yeah.
past 61. But there's nothing you can do about that really, because it's just the
Indeed,
way
there's so
it
many
fell.
different things, variables when you want to put the games in a
Yeah.
particular order. So, I mean, I was happy with it, of course.
I mean, you couldn't guess that it would have finished on that game.
No,
So it's just a pity.
and it looked like you were gonna win it anyway. So it was all your
Yeah.
fault.
Yeah, I've still got no idea what I was thinking of that move at the end.
Well.
Never mind.
basically, the thing about that game is that everybody assumes that the bigger numbers come up more often than they do, and they
do,
don't.
yeah.
And that was basically the thing about that. So that was that game, and game 14 was Ogenbinder Odekasiran, or Blindfold or Cash. And this game was left to the end because I thought it was a slightly silly game, and it wasn't necessarily one that I wasn't unhappy for its never to be played. And I knew it might be a little bit harder to follow on the video as well. In retrospect, I wish I'd painted the letters different colours so they would pop out a bit better on the video. But anyway, how did you find this one played?
Oh, I love this game.
This was a funny game, mainly because we knew the answers to the questions quite early, so it was just trying to rifle through the bowls to get the letters as quickly as possible. And I think you can tell my frustration at one point, trying to work out where the bloody hell the was it on one occasion that it was literally the last letter on your bowl, Dan? I think
It was, yes.
Um,
Couldn't have made that any better. Thank you.
I mean, it was largely a game of luck because of that, but it was fun and it was funny. So
I don't know. I know there's a huge amount of skill. How quickly can you feel out these things? Yeah, it's a little bit of luck on what comes into your hand. And to be fair, there was one of the questions where it was the first or second letter that I had, and I thought I knew it, but I waited for a couple more clues, and then the clues confirmed it. Yeah, there's luck, but I think it very much down to two things. One, you starting to sift through the letters as soon as the question begins, which I think you were doing as well, but also the speed at which you do it. So as soon as you know it, obviously you sped up. And the letters were all very well defined. I found them relatively easy to work out. I think the only things you had to be careful of were a couple of like the I and the J, because you might just feel the top half, but you have to quickly just feel the bottom half and things like that. M and N, that was always fun.
I think you said that M and W were a bit worrisome.
Oh yeah, M and W, and one of the answers was W actually, wasn't it? So all to do with the sides there, the straight sides on the M and the not straight sides on the W there. But as it turned out, it was actually quite pleasurable to feel these letters.
Well, I did spend quite some time on Amazon trying to get the right set. that
You didn't have to
you know,
order 26 different letters, did you?
no, luckily there was a set that was relatively cheap. That was sort of they said it's actually designed for scrapbooking. So if you want to like paste, I don't know, your name on the front of a scrapbook or something like that, you could guarantee that there was one of each letter plus some spares for common letters and vowels. I had to take out some repeats. I was very nearly going to sort of take out some of the less common letters so that you only had 20 to go through. But then I thought, well, I think it'd be more logical
Gone
to
this
give you
far.
all.
It was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought if I was going to allow you to at least start searching as soon as I started speaking, then it wouldn't drag on too long. I think I was pretty happy with that. It was if it was you couldn't even have a chance to do anything before you knew the answer, that would have taken a while. So
I mean, it's
And
a
also
pity that
then-
there's no. Gone.
And also, then, how do you know that they're searching, that they've really got the answer to when they start? So you have to start at the beginning of the question. You're quite right. So, 26 is absolutely fine.
I was going to say it's a shame there's no comedy hunt the buzzer element to this. There's no way it could be done, unfortunately.
Yeah,
But it's a shame.
it had crossed my mind. I felt that given this might have been a crucial game, I wasn't going to do that.
That's fair enough.
Right, and so that takes us finally to Puffball. Again, which I didn't bother to translate. This is just a game that I found in the shop, and I thought, well, this is quite unusual. It would work relatively okay on a desktop, and it needed to be something that was a race to the finish.
It's a good game 15, I think. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Mm.
I want to know how the physics works. Because I'm blowing down and the ball's coming up. How does that work? I don't understand.
So basically, the ball goes down the sides of the air goes down the sides of the ball, and it's isn't it basically how a vacuum cleaner works in terms of like the pressure difference causes the ball to be trapped in a column of air and go upwards because the fast moving air is low pressure air. Yeah. So if the air is not moving in the bottom of the cup, that means it's high pressure, whereas the air that's coming out of your mouth is low pressure, and so the ball will always be attracted towards low pressure. Okay, that's basically how a plane works, or supposedly that's how we think it works. Anyway, wherever there's faster moving air, that's lower pressure air. Now, I think the technique is if you adjust the angle at which you blow, you get different results. So if you blow straight down, it will go more up, whereas if you blow at more at an angle, it will blow more across.
That's what I was trying to do. Out
Yeah.
of interest, David, did you try this one at home before
I've
Circus?
I've tried this with myself, and we also had it at the Parent Teachers Association Christmas party.
Excellent.
And there was one guy who was brilliant at it, and the way he did it was he sort of blew slowly but constantly to sort of mimic a bit like a vacuum cleaner type of airflow, but also he got quite close as well. So his lips were like only about 3 inches away from the cup, and so exactly. So he was able to hover the ball at a particular height a lot more successfully. Now, if you that's it. So now that's gone up a bit higher. Now, if you put it, now if you bring that cup even closer to under your chin, Dan,
Go on,
you
Dan.
should find it will even go up even higher. I think. You see, yeah. You see, I think that's sort of working. Yeah. There's the image.
Yeah.
There you are. Yeah. So it is possible to sort of work out a kind of technique. I don't think it's sort of a complete crapshoot.
We were going in blind though, so we were
Oh yeah,
feeling,
absolutely. I mean,
feeling
until I saw that guy do that technique, I had no idea how he did it. Basically most people just sort of go.
Yeah.
I think that's what we were doing.
I just
pretty
got the
much.
giggles. I just the continuous blowing. I just found it slightly funny, and I'm just going.
I was
"The
genuinely
giggles."
going dizzy at one point. I had to stop for a second.
Oh dear. Oh, great fun. Great fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people asked what would a game 16 have been. Well, it might have been a repeat of Boku that we did in Schlag 2. It might have been. I could have sort of fired up the dice generator again and done that sort of Verfeln game that they do, where you have to kind of keep rolling until you hit a 6, and then that cancels your score.
Yeah.
And you have to get up to 51. Or I might have done that like internet search game where you have to sort of think of a search term or pair of search terms that come up with the lowest or the highest number of Google hits. But luckily, we didn't need a game of 16. There was a game that I did have, which was called Memory Poker, which didn't work. I thought the idea was going to be you were going to get shown about 20 cards in a position, and then those cards would get hidden, and then you take turns to pick cards from that stack. But then I realized if there are, let's say, there's 4 aces, then you're going to have to almost pick 2 aces each, because if you don't, then that means that the other person is pretty much guaranteed three of a kind in aces
Yeah. Yeah.
straight away. So you it's too easy to negate each other or copy each other, mirror each other. It's too strong as a thing. So luckily I bin that and replaced it with Quinto actually. So there we go. So
And we had a memory game as well in the Connect 4, so there was that
exactly.
as well.
Yeah, quite. So anyway, I was pretty happy with how it all went. I don't think there was any real clunkers of a game. We got through the 4 hours intact. We stayed on air.
We had no technical difficulties, astonishingly,
No,
or at
it's
least
amazing.
nothing on the surface. Were there any points, Scott, that you had that we didn't spot? Did you have any problems?
Nothing major. This was my first live stream of 4 hours, doing this kind of thing with multiple streams, and it worked out pretty well. There's a couple things, I wish there was a couple OBS tricks I wish I had known because I was editing things on the fly. There's a few stray sound glitches. And if one person pointed out that I forgot to crop the border from the clock, so you could very see a ghostly white rectangle when the clock was on screen. But other than that, but like I said, these are just minor things, and I'm just happy on the day everyone had a good time. The chat seemed to have a great time. That was probably the most active chat, just everyone participating in all the games, and I think that was, for me, the highlight of the day.
Were you able to watch any of the games or sort of enjoy the games, or were you all just busy all the time?
Actually, for most, for I think once we got past the music round, because that was the most technically complicated, everything after that I could just watch. And you have no, I guess I'll say this now, during the Who Lies round, especially the square roots, really wanted to buzz in for you, but that's not how this works. But yeah, most of the second half, was just enjoying just watching it, and it was fun. So then you guys are great contestants, and obviously a great person in charge of everything with the great games.
Yeah, and very much thank you for doing all the technical stuff, because we would have no idea what we're doing. I mean, we were lucky with Google Hangouts years ago when it sort of did most of the sort of thing for us, but this is a massive step up at what we had.
Just to explain to people, we were watching for various reasons, because it was the most sort of close to what we were able to see at the time. We were watching a 1 second behind the stream, relatively low res copy of the stream on Discord. So actually, when we got to see what had actually gone out live on YouTube with like these many screens, like effectively 5 compositive screens on top of each other, and it looked really quite clear and really good. It was amazing to see. And yeah, as Scott says, it's great to see everybody playing along. That's one of the things that, as I said at the very start, I was very keen on as many games as possible being play along
Yeah.
in some way, shape, or form. That you could either do something yourself, like answer a questionnaire or play a jigsaw, or you could shout answers at the screen, or have a guess at something. There was, yeah, obviously a few things where you just have to sit and watch Dan and Nick do the thing, and you can't join in. But hopefully they had their own comedy value themselves, which they often did. It was a very close thing, all in all. Actually, there was I think at least 3 rounds that went to the very last question.
Yeah.
So not that anybody really watches it for the final score, and I mean, I don't know what I personally am going to do in the future, because I feel like I've sort of put to rest my unhappiness with the second one. I feel like I would be really struggling to come up with as good a set of 15 games as that. So if anybody wants to take over the mantle from my side of things, I'm happy to sort of maybe help lend a hand. But I think that might be me.
But
be
not
me
all
done.
15. Oh, goodness. I'll tell you
Yeah,
one thing
but
I thought you did really well this time in comparison to numbers 1 and 2, and that was all the games were ever so slightly shorter. Just only by, instead of first to 7, it was first to 5, just by 1 or 2. And I think it helped the whole evening go just that much smoother.
I think it was roughly 4 hours, which is it's probably the shortest of the 3 shows.
It was bang on where we wanted it to be as well.
Yeah.
So I thought all the games were the right length. I don't think any games overstayed their welcome, which is a massive problem on Schlag den Raab. Ringing the ball. So yeah.
And that's with most of them going to the last question a lot of the time.
That's true. That's true. I think, I mean, there are a couple of games that I was like, oh, I really want to keep on playing this. And then I realized, oh, hang on, that we don't want that, because then it's going to overstay its welcome and all these things. The music round, I think, was the only one I thought, oh, I really, really wanted to keep on playing right there and then.
Yeah, I mean, even I think Narman was 6-2, so we could have had maybe 3 more questions of that. I wasn't unhappy that the jigsaw was won straight away with 2-0, because it does go on a while.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The what else do we have? Yeah, I mean, Fear looked 6-3. Well, there's only 2 more questions you could have had of that before that hit the maximum anyway.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, it was very competitive all the way through, and yeah, as you said, if I was mulling between should this be a first to 5 or first to 6, I would always go the lower option.
Yeah.
And I don't think I regretted it. It didn't really feel like 4 hours, I have to say. It felt more
no, absolutely.
3. So yeah, and now we've got all this technology. I don't know quite what to do with it all. It is an awful lot of work. I mean, I was probably working properly on it every evening for the previous 9 evenings. I kind of did like a game a night, and then maybe 2 games a night for the last couple of days. Scott, how long do you estimate all of your side of things took in total?
I would say at least like on the order of like 12 to 20 hours spread out, and that.
Wow.
But that, again, this was for fun, because this was stuff I wanted to make for a long. I've been wanting to make a proper buzzer system that was tested, and
only 20 hours. I thought it was about 100.
No. I don't know. I don't know if you count research and testing. I could be.
I think you're underplaying.
I mean, books weigh 100 grams, so I don't know anything about estimation. So
I know that there are a couple of nights that you basically just did that instead of sleeping. So I think it was more.
There were a couple, but there was that moment when everything clicked technologically, like when we did the first rehearsal, when we did a rehearsal one, and when I did a lot of proper buzzer testing with some other devices, it just clicked, and it was a great feeling. And so I don't know what the future will hold. I don't know if there will be, and I will openly joke about a Christmas special, but I don't know how that would happen if it did. but I'm just happy that, hey, we had a great broadcast at this caliber, and
Yeah.
I'm very happy with that.
It's something that I'm very proud of, and I hope that we're all very proud of. Everyone, pat yourselves on the back. Yeah.
As I said from early on, I've had to do virtually nothing for this. Just turn up and play games. It's just absolutely fine by me, frankly.
You could argue that without the community that you've curated over the past 20 odd years, then there wouldn't be a reason to do it. So there we go.
But think of the good things that come up. You've got a proper working buzzer system, amazing potential for multi-screen internet shows. So who knows what might come of it.
Anyway, well, watch this space. So that's probably it. Hope we've answered all of your questions. If not, then you can put a comment down in the Bothers bar, and I'm sure we'll come around to it. But I think that's probably scratched most of your itches. So for the final time, for now, it's goodbye from Scott Ruggs.
Goodbye.
Goodbye from Nick Gates.
Bye bye.
Goodbye from the victorious Daniel Peak.
Goodbye.
And from me, David Bodicum, it's goodbye.